From the land of lakes, this is 10,000 Takes. Brought to you by Minnesota Score Radio. Wally and Eric back for yet another week as we slice and dice the always busy, always topical, super saturated Minnesota sports scene. And here we are, Wally, now getting close to mid-April as we speed through the year 2025. And
you got your taxes done yet?
They've been filed.
Yes, very good. All right, good for you.
It's never good news, but you might as well take your medicine and move on.
Get it done.
Okay. The marathon NHL and NBA regular seasons will be coming to a close here soon.
Yes.
That means the playoffs. It looks like both teams, the Wild and the Timberwolves from the land of lakes, are going to punch playoff tickets. So let's start with the Wolves. They're not going to have that lofty seed they did a year ago when they were the 2 seed and they reached the Western Conference Finals against Dallas. But they're going to get in, and it's probably going to be either 5-6 or 7-8. And you don't want to be 7 because that means it's play-in time.
Right, 7 or 8. And they won't be 9 or 10, but they're going to be somewhere between, as you said, probably 5 and 8. Theoretically, as we record this show, they had an outside chance of getting as high as 3. But I think the problem, of course, is that they had all those games early on and actually throughout the season against losses like teams like Washington and Utah and some of these bottom feeders in the NBA that they needed to win, and somehow they managed to lose those basketball games. And those are killers. When you get down to this point of the season, when every game, and there was like a 5 or 6 way tie between, or 4-way tie.
Golden State, Memphis,
the Lakers
Minnesota,
are in the mix.
The LA Clippers.
And then the Lakers were in that mix as well as Denver. Denver without a head coach. So, you got all these teams in this mix. And had they won those games, it's, woulda, coulda, shoulda won those games. But now, as we always say, those games back in October and November, they meant just as much as these games being played right now down the stretch.
Yeah, they all add up. They truly do, and it may bite the T-Wolves in the butt. I think the thing about the Minnesota Timberwolves to me, I'm on record, a lot of us are, saying we didn't like the Cat trade. But we'll see how it plays out. Let's see if maybe they get on a run. I believe this team can play with any team. They're pretty deep. They're athletic. They have a swagger. I think they're deeper than, say, Denver. As you mentioned, Denver let go of their head coach, Michael Malone, and their GM a few days ago. So Denver's not happy with their lot in life right now in the NBA. But they can play with OKC. I think they've won 2 out of 3 against the Thunder this season. But can they do it over a 7-game series? And do they have the maturity to do it? Now, they took a quantum leap last season when they got to the Western Conference Finals, but then they bottomed out against Dallas, who, oh, by the way, is on the cusp of making the playoffs. Dallas is in freefall mode. Yeah. Minus Luka, and Anthony Davis has been injured. Kyrie's out. But anyways, I think the possibility of this team going on a run is there. But in the West, where there's so many landmines, to think about going deep from a lower seed, it's very unlikely. You see it in the NHL. Right. We've seen it in MLB and the NFL. You don't see it very often in the NBA.
And what seed was Dallas last year when they made their run? They were certainly behind the Wolves.
They were a 4 or a 5.
Yeah. So that gives you an idea of how hard it is. And
that's about as good as it gets in the NBA.
And they lost. Let's not forget that. They got to the finals and lost. So, and if that's what you should be striving for to get to and win the NBA title, get to the finals. If you reach the Western Conference Finals, the next step would be to get to the finals. And once you're in, anything can happen.
Well, and that's, my good friend Larry, you know Larry very well. He always says, well, you're really hard on the Wolves. Are you sold on them now? I said, Larry, I'll be sold on the Timberwolves when they either equal what they did last season or get to the NBA Finals. The goal here is to win a championship. I think we sometimes forget that in the state of Minnesota because we're in this epic drought when it comes to the male sports teams.
Really?
That we set the bar, very low.
Yes,
the goal is to win a title.
Yeah, well, maybe someday we'll get one. It's been since 1991 since we had one, and we haven't had a hockey team in the finals since
Forget
1991.
about Arizona. Minnesota's the desert, a sports desert. Stick around. We're going to talk Hawks. At Micheletti going to join us here on 10K Takes, your hoops ticket.
When you see somebody who's a great skater, you can see in their individual rhythm. My name is Christian Grunna. I am owner, head coach, operator, main instructor for Grunna Power Skating. We had a history of not just speed skating, but auto racing in our family, so we're always interested in being fast. I want every player that comes my way to develop their skills, but also grow confidence in themselves as a human being.
In Lakeville, Minnesota, dozens of meeting venues are ready to host your next corporate event, banquet, and holiday party. Lakeville has unique conference facilities, a variety of hotels, an abundance of team-building options, and dining that are sure to impress. For suggestions that suit your needs, please call the Lakeville Convention and Visitors Bureau at 952-469-2020 or go to visitlakeville.org. Lakeville, we mean business.
Seeing clearly matters. Being seen matters more. Nobody cares for eyes more than Pearl.
Minnesota scores 10,000 takes, rolling along. Your Minnesota Wild, as of this recording, on the edge of pushing into the postseason. We're going to assume that they make it. I mean, it would take an ultimate collapse by the Wild and a real run by Calgary for that not to happen. And joining us now is Pat Micheletti, one-time Gopher hockey star, also played for the North Stars as well and does some radio for the Minnesota Wild. All right, Pat, let's make the assumption they're in. What's it going to take for them to win a round or two? Are they capable of doing this, or is that pie in the sky at this point?
Well, I think once you get in, anything's possible. We've seen that in the past. So you have that. But realistically, they need to be healthy, meaning they need to get Kaprizov back. They need to get Ek back. If they don't get those two guys back, I would deem it very, very unlikely that they'll get past the first round. I think it's just too hard. And that being said, you look at any team in the National Hockey League, if you want to win, you have to be healthy. Yes, we can talk about goaltending. We can talk about power play. We can talk about penalty kill. But if you're not healthy, it's going to be impossible to win. And so hopefully they've got some good news coming up with Ek and Kaprizov coming back. That's going to help. And, potentially next week they're going to get additional help with the signing of Zeev Buyam, which I believe is going to happen. And I do believe that he is the guy that is going to step right in and be a part of their lineup. So, that would be adding three guys that could, be key in what you hope is a long run.
All right, so if they get Joel Eriksson back and Kirill Kaprizov, and they play up to their capabilities and they can shake off the rust and they get the young kid out of Denver, is Philip Gustafsson the kind of goalie that could turn into a human stop sign in the playoffs? Because, Pat, you got to get that red-hot goalie, somebody like Jordan Binnington a few years ago for St. Louis, or whoever. Is he capable of it? And then is the Flower capable of spelling him for a game or two, Marc-Andre Fleury?
Well, here's the way I look at it, E, and it's kind of, to me, your goalie is as good as you defend in your own end. Philip Gustafsson did not have a great year last year. We all know that, right? But they defended horribly. Their decor was not that good, with Spurgeon out and Brodin out a long period of time, and so they weren't great defensively as a team. I think this year, and his numbers show it, is that he's playing better, but defensively as a 5-man unit, they're playing much, much better. So that being said, and that's why I always give them hope, because I think they defend really, really well. I think that's one thing John Hines is, he's a stickler for detail. We all know that. We also know that this team has a hard time scoring goals, but they defend extremely well, in my opinion. And so when you have that, I think you give yourself a chance. So to answer your question, yes, because Gustafson is being asked to make that that normal save, and he has the ability, as we have seen, to come up with that big save. Any goalie that you leave hung out to dry is going to get beat. I mean, it's just reality. And so if they can defend, I think he is a guy that has got the confidence now that he can make that big save when needed.
The other factor, of course, if Kaprizov and Eriksson Ek come back,
Yep.
are they going to be 100%? I assume they're going to be as close to a 100% as possible, but are they going to be able to be in mid-season form, which is what they really need, right?
The way I look at it is that there's a difference between one of your bottom six guys being out and an elite player being out. I think elite players like Kaprizov, yeah, of course, it's going to take them time. How much time? A period, 2 periods, a game. Okay. So I think with their skill set and their knowledge and understanding of the game, I think they have the ability to come back quicker. They're both working their tails off conditioning wise. And yes, it's different because you're going to be getting hit and all that. And so that is going to take some time. But, I do think elite players have a quicker time adapting to that pace and that playoff style quicker than other guys.
Pat, paint the picture. What would it
Yep.
be like if the Minnesota Wild went on an unlikely playoff run? Because you got to go back to 91 with the North Stars reaching the Stanley Cup Finals against Pittsburgh, and then they met the Islanders a few years earlier. That's it for pro hockey in Minnesota. The Wild have only gone to the Western Conference Finals once. I think that was year 2 or 3. So it's really a drought here in the so-called state of hockey. What would it be like here if this team took their fan base on a run?
I don't have to tell either of you guys because you know what it would be like, and it would be complete bedlam. And the great thing about this year is that I think it's unexpected. I didn't expect them to make the playoffs this year. 100% honesty, I did not, because I just didn't think they had enough horses to do it. Well, they just played well as a team all year, didn't listen to the outside noise, didn't worry about 3 defensemen out at one time, 2 or 3 forwards out at a different time. They just kept playing. And so now, if they were to make a run, which is not out of the realm of possibility, and, they would play like that team that nobody expects, right? And it would just be them, and they would come together. And this is a poor analogy, but I'm going to use it. It's like the Penn State Nittany Lions making it to the Frozen Four this year, starting off the year 0-9 in conference play. Everyone said you're done, except for the guys in that room, the coaching staff, and everybody. And you know what? They got to a point where they didn't lose, and then they didn't think they could lose, and they didn't accept losing. That's the type of team a run that you can get on. And so, hey, you never know. And there's going to be less pressure on them than there is going to be on the first team that they're going to face in the opening round, which is the toughest round to win, in my opinion, is that first round. So, you know what? Let's drop the puck and see what happens.
Yeah, I don't recall which one, Pat, whether it was the first Stanley Cup run in the early 80s or the one that Eric spoke of in 91, but they were on the road the entire time, if you recall. They were, and they kept winning at least one on the road to start each of those series. Beyond that, we talk about Kaprizov and Eriksson Ek and how important they would be should they come back healthy and able to contribute. What about Rossi? How important is this guy? Because they need him too, right?
You know what? I've been somewhat hard on him to a certain degree. I'm going to give him all the credit in the world for the season that he had. But things are going to get tougher in the playoffs, no question. He's not going to have the room that he had. He's not the biggest guy in the world. That concerns me a little bit. I 100% want to be proven completely wrong on this guy that he can get to the front of the net in the playoffs. That he's not afraid to do that. And guess what? You're right. He has got to contribute in the playoffs. They cannot rely on on Boldy and Kaprizov and Eck and Zuccarello. They're going to need more than that. And he's one of those guys that the expectation level has now gone up another notch.
All right, if the Wild punch that playoff ticket, there's a chance they could face Winnipeg in round one. We know it's a border battle. It's an international border battle. Throw in tariffs, acrimony between the two nations, Canada and the U.S., booing national anthems. It's a chippy rivalry anyways. What would that be like?
Fabulous. And in fact, I was posed the question the other day, who would you rather face in the first round? And to me, I don't want to face Vegas. They're big, they're strong, they control the wall. Their D are really good, and and they've got enough offense to win. So I wouldn't want to play them in the first round. I wouldn't want to play Dallas with their I just think their depth is really good, and they have Minnesota's number. And for some reason, the matchup doesn't feel right for me. Winnipeg. We don't talk enough about how good Winnipeg is, but boy, I just think the competitive juices and what you just said, Wally, about this rivalry. I think it would be a wonderful series, but I do think that Minnesota has enough to frustrate, a Connor, a Scheifele, guys like that, and you know what? I think it'd be a great series.
Patrick, appreciate you spending some time with us. We will check in with you during the postseason, which we know is going to happen.
Anytime, guys. I appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Take care, Pat.
He's Pat Micheletti,
Thanks.
the great former Gopher, right here with us on 10,000 Takes. Stay with us. More to come after this.
Great touchdown. Can I have a quick word with you? You are in jeopardy of failing my class. Change this or no more football.
If you want to be a great athlete, you have to study too.
I do want to play. I saw an ad on social media about reading out loud literacy program. Maybe they can help.
You did it.
When you read, you know. According to the 2021 to 2022 Minnesota Comprehensive Assessments, just 31% of black students are proficient in reading, compared to 59% of white students. In addition, just 20% of black students are proficient in math, in comparison to 54% of their white counterparts. The more you read, the more you know. Reading out loud literacy can help you. Visit llcooljorg.com for more information. Reading Out Loud Literacy is sponsored by City of Minneapolis Community Trauma Response Fund.
Wally and Eric from 10,000 Takes here in the land of lakes. And if you want sports of all sorts, check us out. We cover all the bases, all the teams in the great state of Minnesota.
Vikings, Twins, Wild, Gophers, Timberwolves, Loons, you name it, we do it. Late night Saturday night on Fox 9 Plus and on the Fox local app.
I've been meaning to give you these for many years. I think they're perfect.
Maya?
Oh, I love your earring. Why didn't you try these?
It isn't just about vision.
It's about care. Nobody cares for eyes more than Pearl.
We are 10,000 takes, and we are in the first month of the Major League Baseball season. If a tree falls in the forest and nobody is there to hear it, does it make a sound? I think that may apply to your Minnesota Twins right now.
Yeah, I sense a lot of apathy with this ball club here in Twins territory. I've always said you'd rather have anger from the fan base because that means they care. If you have apathy, it means they've checked out. They don't care. And there's so many options now, especially for sports fans in the Twin Cities, to go elsewhere. You focus on the T-Wolves, focus on the Wild, Minnesota United. I mean, the Vikings have a draft coming up. On and on it goes.
Yeah.
But I think I want to be clear about this.
Yes.
There's plenty of games left.
Of course.
They can get this barge turned around in the Mississippi River. But this is the worst-case scenario. To start slow, coming off of a historic collapse last September when they blew a chance to go to the playoffs, you didn't do anything in the postseason as far as making a splash, right? There was no tsunami made by the Twins. They laid low as usual. So you're not winning any fans back right now. In fact, I think you're losing them.
Yeah. The only good news is they have a TV deal now, at least. I mean, you can, if you stream, you can pay your $100 and you can watch every game all season long, basically. They're going to have 15 games on over the air on Fox 9, so that's a good thing. And I think that most of the cable operators have it now, although I did see that they took a jab at Mediacom because Mediacom dropped them, and now they want people to call up Mediacom. So, hey, that's part of the game that they play, I guess, between the ball clubs and the cable operators. But in any case, maybe it's good that people aren't watching right now because they're not playing. They didn't play very well, at least coming out of the gate.
No, they did not. They really had a meltdown game against Houston on Sunday.
Oh, that was the worst.
You and I were there, and for some reason they blow big leads against the Astros historically at Target Field. I remember one in 2018. They were up by 6 in the 8th inning, and Houston scored 11 and then added 4 more and one going away. I think with the Twins, I just don't know how many people care right now. I know if they win and sustain it, people will come back. And the other thing is they always seem to get bad draws with the schedule. The New York Mets, highest payroll MLB, a feel-good team a year ago, making the postseason. They're here next week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday?
They are.
And I'm sure Wednesday's a getaway day game, right?
I'm sure
12,
it is.
10 p.m. So that's a horrible time to get the Mets. You want to have them in June, July, or August on a weekend. And the Twins never seem to get that.
Well, they didn't get it with the Dodgers last year.
They're always here in April.
You know that.
And they go to L.A. this year in mid-July.
Go figure. Well,
MLB doesn't like the Twins.
No, they don't. All right. When we come back, takes of the day. Always interesting what this guy has to say. Not really. Stay with us, though. This is 10,000 Takes.
Seeing clearly matters. Being seen matters more. Nobody cares for eyes more than Pearl.
When you see somebody who's a great skater, you can see their individual rhythm. My name is Christian Grunna. I'm owner, head coach, operator, main instructor for Grunna Power Skating. We had a history of not just speed skating, but auto racing in our family, so we're always interested in being fast. I want every player that comes my way to develop their skills, but also grow confidence in themselves as a human being.
In Lakeville, Minnesota, dozens of meeting venues are ready to host your next corporate event, banquet, and holiday party. Lakeville has unique conference facilities, a variety of hotels, an abundance of team-building options, and dining that are sure to impress. For suggestions that suit your needs, please call the Lakeville Convention and Visitors Bureau at 952-469-2020 or go to visitlakeville.org. Lakeville, we mean business.
British A. Robinson, president and CEO of the Barbara Bush Foundation, stated, "America's low literacy crisis is largely ignored, historically underfunded and woefully under-researched, despite being one of the great solvable problems of our time. Learning to read is fun and essential." Reading Out Loud Literacy is sponsored by City of Minneapolis Community Trauma Response Fund.
10K takes on television as we wrap up yet another episode. A big shout out to the viewers in the Twin Ports and the Twin Cities. We're up and down that I-35 corridor, and they're going to find out what your mood is. Are you a happy camper this week, a sarcastic Sam? Maybe you're a grumpy Guardian. Cleveland off to a slow start. What is it?
Well, kind of grumpy, but not really. So as you mentioned, you and I went to the ballpark this past Sunday, watched the Twins collapse against the Astros, and that was a bad deal. They had a 6-run lead in the baseball game and couldn't manage to leave Target Field and leave the Twin Towns with a series victory and a victory over the Astros. But there was good news and bad news, okay? The good news, the Twins, let's start with the bad news, actually. Only 14,000 people showed up that day, and 16,000 on Saturday. And Sunday was a nice day. So 14,000, that's not very good for a sunny Sunday afternoon. Temperature was, mid-50s, close to 60. It was a pretty nice day. The good news is there were only 14,000 people there to watch that disaster unfold as the Twins, as I said, blew a 6-run lead. Look, there is apathy. We talked about it a little bit earlier in the show. They need to win baseball games, number one. It's early in the season. I know that, so you're not going to get the draws that you normally get in the summer. But you got to win now so that people have a reason to come and see you, other than to go pay for those $15 and $20 beers over at Target Field in June and July.
All right, let's see what that mood meter says. Oh, he's a sarcastic Sam.
Kind
All
of.
right, there you go. By the way, the Dodgers are selling a $40 forearm-long hot dog this season.
$40?
$40. So maybe things aren't that bad at trendy Target Field.
My goodness.
That's ridiculous.
Remind me not to go to L.A. anytime soon.
Okay. Well, my take of the day, let's circle it over to the Minnesota Vikings.
Okay.
They're on the clock. The draft is coming up later this month in Green Bay. But what about Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, the general manager? Now, we know Kevin O'Connell. He got his contract extension,
right.
So KOC is safe. But what about KAM, Kwesi? He's got to be next on the clock, right? I mean, he's a tag team with Kevin O'Connell, and I think, his drafting record, I would say, has been spotty. He's hit on some, he's missed on some others, but his ability to sign guys, free agency last year, Andrew Van Ginkel, Jonathan Grenard, Blake Cashman, just to name a few, picking up Jordan Mason this offseason, getting TJ Hawkinson, Aaron Jones. Mm-hmm. I think he's been excellent in acquiring talent and is a big reason why the Minnesota Vikings are a successful NFL team with a culture that a lot of guys around the NFL now say, hey, that's a place I want to go play. So to the Wilf family, I think you need to get Kwesi signed long-term so you don't have any questions lingering around your general manager as you get toward the regular season, because they will only ramp up if he's unsigned.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, they need Kwesi. They need him to sign people, if not to draft them.
Exactly. All right, big thank you to everybody who made this show possible. We're going to say so long. This is 10K Takes, your sports.